films on the HIFA network, and so I think people, probably most of you anyway, have seen that and kind of know where we're at. We're releasing now new films on newborn care and on childbirth, and we're undertaking a new breastfeeding series as well. But I thought, in the interest of time, I would just focus on a couple of, I guess, 2 or maybe 3 of what I think are the main challenges we're facing. Neil had asked early on about to what extent financing was a problem, and you know, I was going to say financing is a huge constraint for us. I mean, we really see the opportunities to make videos across the whole spectrum of problems that people are facing worldwide to really be limitless, and you know, now and in the continued future. And of course, being mindful that you know, what we do in video today might look very different in 5 years, and in terms of the whole technology of what's used and how films are made and interactivity and all that sort of thing. But anyway, given that, it's a big problem. And so I think one of the key challenges for us is it comes down to measurement. So it's really important for us to understand and document our results and collect data on kind of what we're doing and how well we're succeeding. And it's obviously, I think, important for a lot of reasons. Funding is one of the key ones. How we embrace and develop our communication strategy, how we think strategically about what we're going to do next. And it kind of reminds me of that Zen koan, like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? Well, that's a little bit where we're at. So if we put all these films out kind of widely, and you know, that's the goal in some ways, to put the films out as widely and freely as we can. I mean, that's really what we want to do. But at the same time, this kind of demand for better measurement mandates that we have a more tightly controlled system. And so we're trying to face that, you know, and figure out how best to address that. We've recently rebuilt our website, and one of the reasons we did that is to better measure what we do and to register people and count usage. And that gives us the ability to ask people on the kind of at the beginning, kind of what their plans are and how they intend to use the videos, but also kind of, I think, more powerfully to go back and survey them later to see, did they in fact do what they had intended to do? What else did they did? And then to engage them in a more meaningful way. And so that's one of the issues. How do we deal with that? And if we want people to distribute this more widely and freely, as we've done in the past, and they bypass our system, then we lose that information. And then, you know, it has its pros and cons, and we're trying to sort that out. So it's a big challenge. The second thing I think that I wanted to mention was trying to find the best business model. And so there's this whole thing about, you know, how do you sustain this in the longer term? You know, it's great to have impact now. We want to have impact in 5 years and 10 years, so we have to be here. And so as we approach donors and funders, sometimes it's a red flag if things are free. You know, they want to know, you know, if you're relying on donations in a big dose of volunteer and pro bono help, you know, they're concerned about that. And so when they see, oh, everything's free, well, you know, does this really make sense for where you're at and what you're trying to do? And so, of course, that's another big challenge. How do you know, what's the best approach? I mean, House's model in some ways seems like a fantastic way to go. You have a for-profit arm that generates money that allows you to do these other things that embrace free use. You know, so if you're going to do that, you have to have the for-profit arm, of course. And so as you're starting out, that's all hard to sort out. Then finally, I think I just mentioned the third thing, I guess, the challenges valuation that's been talked about. I didn't have a chance to jump in here, but I want to add one thing. You know, one place we see, you know, it's clearly important. I understand the constraints, and it's extremely difficult in many ways. But we're trying to lean on many of our users. So we have, you know, at least 2,000 organizations now who use our videos. Many of these organizations get funding in which they're required to demonstrate their output, outcomes, and impact. And so we're trying to lean on them to say, while you're doing this, you know, who's the burden of proof with here? It seems to us that you're using these videos, you're using them because you believe they're helpful in your programs, that they help you train and they do the job more effectively. So we think that's the place where the evaluation and analysis components should lie. And so we're trying to work. We've got a few doing this now, but of course, they have their own, financial concerns. They have time constraints. They have a million things to do. So it's often hard to get them to disaggregate the analysis and research they do to the level to make that happen. And so, but we're trying, and I think that's probably where we're going to be most effective doing it. Some of it can be kind of easy, just doing knowledge testing. Did this affect knowledge? The practice part's a little bit harder. Of course, the impact part, how did this change health outcomes or ultimately save lives? That can be extremely difficult, if not impossible in cases. So I think I'll leave it there. See if anybody wants to comment or have any questions.
Any questions for Peter?
Just Jeff Royston again. Just in case you didn't pick it up earlier on, and to amplify slightly the point I made about the evaluation, that order you gave, knowledge is a bit easier or less hard, you would say, to evaluate than practice, which in turn is less hard than evaluating health outcomes. And my point was, you don't always need to go all the way down that chain. Quite often we know about the impact of, say, changes in practice on changes on health outcome. And if you can just fill in the missing bit about what the knowledge increment was, or maybe have to say what the increment effect on practice was, but maybe not even that. You don't always have to go more than one step down that chain, at most two. And that seems to be missed by quite a lot of people. And I found information, I may be able to do something on this in coming months, where that knowledge actually was embedded in some of the survey material and so on, but nobody actually pulled it out. So you found, we did actually know what the impact of knowledge on practice was, and we certainly knew from other studies what the impact of practice on outcomes were. So actually we've got the complete link. Okay, many cases are more complex and subtle than that, we all know that, but sometimes they're not, and it's worth pulling out those.
Right. No, yeah, that's helpful. I think the funder or donor, I think they can be... it's quite a little range in what they're willing to accept on that. But yes, point's well taken. I understand that.
Okay, I'm still on. We'll wrap it up. There will be follow-up, don't worry. There will be follow-up opportunities for this type of discussion, but also the notes and things that will come out of this. I'll just put up the issues that I sort of very briefly have grasped. I do want to talk funding very briefly and just ask for general comment, because I always find it amazing, because there is, let's face it, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money floating out there in development, in aid budgets, in philanthropists and whatever else. We have the Asian Venture Philanthropist Network out here based in Singapore, and the issues that they have is not about having the money. They have issues with finding the projects. They have issues with finding viable projects that they understand, that are clearly defined, that people say, yep, this is what we need the money for, and this is what the impact is. I do note Third House, and I do note Alex too, on the creative side, definitely your focus is not doing the numbers. That's not what you should do. So perhaps there are ways that we should start connecting creatives with the guys who do the numbers anyway, because that's what they do. As I said before, with TNS Global and other companies that I've spoken to previously, I think there's probably some opportunities there. So, but generally speaking, do we just think, because as I said, there's a lot of money out there, what is the general view of everybody on the call? And very briefly, any comments, put it on chat or say if you have a view. Why are we not getting the funding? Is it because the donors don't get the impact and the potential impact, or what is it? Anybody?
Hi, it's Josie here from Medical Aid Films. That's the thing, I think it is hard to get funding for these kind of projects because it's not something that's necessarily tangible. It's not an implemented kind of traditional aid project, which is why I think we have seen the value in doing some measurement of the project and looking at the impact of film. But I hope that as technology moves forward, and particularly in the sphere of global health, funders will see the value in the possibilities of using technology to improve health outcomes.
Thank you, Josie. Anybody else?
For me, I think just
yes,
it doesn't have immediate benefit, kind of. The funders are looking for something put in their money, they get the profit or they get the response just as they're putting in the money. But when you put in money for like video animation until it gets to the people, they watch it, and then you start watching whether there's impact, and before you can see, so I think that's one of the reasons.
Yep. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hello, it's Claire here.
Yes, Claire.
It's Claire here. And, I've been in health education my whole career, really. And it's just huge frustration that people will put money into the whole medical model, the medical side of things, and they're just the education and health education, health information. It is always the kind of, the last person to come to the table. And, that's as much in the UK, I've found, as, in the UK system as it is in developing countries. And just people, I don't know why they're so bored by the whole idea of health education. But perhaps as a group, we could sort of come up with jazzing it up a bit, and why it's so important.
Well, perhaps I haven't seen Ferdows's 3 dancing amigo condoms.
But it's like, I don't know the answer to this, because it's so blooming obvious to me that you stop people being ill. I've been with GlaxoSmithKline at quite a high level, and I've said to them, right, what I want to do at Children for Health is I want to do you out of business. Because so much money gets spent on all these drugs and things like that. And it's, if we could start getting hold of the prevention side of things in a massive way, it would really change things for people, but it's somehow not prioritized. So that's my soapbox.
Thank you. And Ferdows, I will read the recent article. Yes. Anybody else before we wrap it up?
Yeah. I just want to say, this is Peter. In some ways, I think we faced early on this problem of almost trying to be too helpful, in the sense that our intent was their very broad reach across kind of major regions. And I think this gets to maybe Josie's point about being an implementer. I think when you come from the individual country perspective and say, okay, we need this project for Nigeria, for Ethiopia, it's so much easier to pull together the appropriate partners and funding sources. But when you go out to a much broader group and try to have a much bigger impact, it's then harder to narrow down, okay, who's really willing to recognize that this can affect so many people. And then the flip side of that is it also becomes much harder to measure what that impact is. When you have a very narrowly defined population you're serving, you kind of, in some sense, the denominator is very evident. In this case, you're trying to have kind of maybe worldwide impact. So again, how do you collect that information? So those are the two sides of the same coin. So I think that's been a problem to some extent for us in terms of convincing donors of the usefulness and need for this.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Okay, because I dropped out there, can somebody, at least one person, save chat, and then perhaps if that's a text document or something, you can send it to me. Would be good. But I think everybody, there will be some notes I'll put together on this, and I've recorded most of it except when I dropped out with no battery. So I also have the MP4 that I can put up as well. I thank everybody very much. I'm going to allow everybody to go back to your lives now. Thank you again, and I hopefully we can see it another conversation like this shortly.
Yeah, this is Tom Cook in Iowa. I just maybe you didn't see my note in the chat, but if you'd like to share your contact information or relevant website links, if you put them in the chat window, then it's possible for each of you to save that chat to your own computer, so you have a record of the comments and whatever else was entered there. So take a look at the chat window, and it might be useful for exchanging information. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Goodbye.